Hi, welcome to Weekend Review, where we catch up on some of the news making headlines. I'm joined this week by senior reporter Nolan Clay, our sports editor Ryan Sharp, and my old friend Don McCoy from business. I'm Phil O'Connor, the live enterprise editor. Again, another busy week in Oklahoma City. Let's get right to it. Nolan, big controversy this week with EMSA. What's the latest there?
Well, EMSA is the ambulance service, and they had a contractor out of Texas who provided the personnel, the drivers, the paramedics, the EMTs, and the federal government, and a complaint in Texas where this private contractor is based, alleged that this private contractor was paying kickbacks for a number of years to get and keep the contract. And now EMSA says it was a profit-sharing thing. Paramedics Plus says it was the contractor down in Texas says it was a profit-sharing plan, and they don't seem too worried about it. But the federal government wants a lot of money.
How are the cities reacting to it?
Cities are, by and large, mostly pleased with EMSA, and they're kind of, trying to see what shakes out. Except for one city councilman here in Oklahoma City, Mr. Ed Shadid, and he said, "Let's dissolve the thing. Let's this CEO of EMSA should quit." But the question is, can it be dissolved? Because there's a window of opportunity where cities can opt out, but that comes only every 5 years, and the last one was last October. So is the next opportunity 5 years from now? Well, we'll have to see.
And then the head of EMSA himself has been implicated in this, and there's a lot of questions about his role in the whole affair.
Yeah, again, this is a civil thing, although it's a civil fraud complaint. There's not any criminal charges yet, and may never be. But the CEO, a guy named Stephen Williamson, personally benefited from this kickback scheme, the government alleges.
And there were also some allegations about what were some of the kind of benefits that were being kicked back. Wasn't there some stuff about like spa visits?
Spa visits, steaks.
And who was that directed to? Is that to the head of EMSA, or
the private contractor gave money back to EMSA, and gave money back to Williamson, or paid for his travel, or provided him steaks. Now, there's really no dispute that this went on. There's a dispute about whether it was kickbacks or a profit-sharing plan.
Gotcha. Okay. And that's in court. What's the next turn that we can expect to see?
Well, there's always a chance there could be an indictment on down the road. There may never be an indictment, but sometimes when you see these civil fraud complaints, the next thing that's the first shoe, and then the second shoe that drops is the indictment. The civil fraud complaint will probably take years to litigate.
Okay. And then just quickly, a little bit of breaking news out of the Capitol this morning, and a story we've been following there on the situation involving some state representatives and inappropriate conduct with employees. What's the latest on that?
Well, alleged inappropriate conduct. There's a special committee that's been meeting. They're getting close to wrapping up. They may issue a report as early as Monday. Representative Dan Kirby, the main legislator who's under investigation because 2 former assistants claim that he sexually harassed them. And he was going to cooperate and then wasn't going to appear before the committee, and now the latest is that he will appear before the committee today.
Any indication of why the change of mind, of why he's willing to appear now?
He said that the process was unfair. He had some specific complaints really. One, that he wasn't allowed to be there when some of the witnesses were questioned, and he says that there's been some negotiations, some discussions, and he feels better. The reality may be, though, that he changed his mind after he was suspended from his position as chairman of an influential House Business Committee, and it also may be because he sees that there's increasingly votes building up to recommend and possibly expel him by the entire House, and this is maybe a last-ditch effort to avoid that.
Great. We'll be keeping an eye on it. look forward to reading your stories on it in the days ahead. Ryan, big week coming up for OU and OSU. But before we get to that, let's talk about a little bit about what happened last night with the Thunder and Enes Kanter.
A little bit of an unfortunate incident during the first half. Kanter was a little frustrated coming off the court. He gotten called for an offensive foul after a couple of missed baskets. Came off the court and hit one of the bench chairs with his fist. In the process, it looks like he fractured his wrist or his forearm, and is now probably going to miss a couple of months of action, which is going to hurt the Thunder significantly. He was averaging a little over 17 points, 8 rebounds or so for the month of January. This is going to hurt their bench production. They don't have a whole lot of scoring coming off the bench. They rely on him for that. So it's going to be interesting to see kind of how they adjust and how they kind of make up for his scoring.
Yeah, well, we were talking earlier, and Nolan is available if they need him. Don't know what kind of game you have, really, but you're willing to step in. OU, OSU, big signing weeks.
Yeah, we're a little less than a week away from National Signing Day. It's most people either love it or hate it, recruiting, because a whole lot of attention paid to 17, 18-year-olds who you don't really know how they're going to pan out. A lot of news for OU this week. They did lose a commitment from a kid named Jacob Phillips from Nashville. He's a 5-star linebacker. Committed to OU early in the process, but was still being chased by LSU and their new coach, Ed Orgeron. He did end up flipping his commitment to LSU on Thursday. But some good news Friday morning for OU. A kid from Ardmore, defensive tackle named Tyrese Lott, flipped his commitment from TCU to OU. So you lose one, you pick up one. OU has about the 5th ranked recruiting class in the country, which is quite good considering they've been in the teens, lower teens for the past 5 or 6 years. Oklahoma State, on the other hand, has a solid class. I think they're ranked 28th or 29th, depending on who you look at. They're on the hunt for offensive linemen. No secret their offensive line's kind of been their struggle on offense the past few years. Had a couple of commitments early that have decommitted and gone to A&M or Texas. They've got a JUCO kid that's coming in. They've got a transfer from Wyoming that has to sit out. So they're still on the hunt for offensive linemen. Both schools have early enrollees. OU actually had 11 kids enroll for this spring semester that are already on campus.
That's what I was going to ask you. How many signees can you have?
It depends on your scholarship numbers. You have a set number of scholarships that you can offer, and most schools put aside anywhere from 20 to 25 each year for freshmen and JUCO transfers. So sometimes you'll have a class of 18 kids, sometimes you'll have a class of 27. It just kind of depends on where you are scholarship numbers. Actually, in this Sunday's paper, we're going to have a look at both schools' scholarship breakdowns, where all of their 85 scholarships are allotted, how many they have available for each for their classes for this year. I think Oklahoma has a little over 20 commitments, and OSU is right under that, I believe, at this point. Both of them should get maybe 1 or 2 more between now and next Wednesday. Always interesting. A lot of local kids go into OU and OSU this year, which is a little bit different than the way it's been the past few years. We've written numerous stories about the lack of local talent that's going to OU and OSU.
In Manhattan, we appreciate that.
Yeah.
A lot of them have been coming up there.
OSU, I think,
Can you
has
send us another locket?
Yeah.
That would be great.
OSU has 3 local kids this year. I think OU has as many as 6, which is, again, not really typical. But a lot of great in-state talent this year. A lot of kids in-state going elsewhere. Just yesterday, I had a kid from Jones that's committed to go to Texas Tech. So there's a lot of really good football talent in Oklahoma. Unfortunately, some of it this year is staying here.
So what can our readers expect and look for in the paper next week?
We'll have stories every day leading up to signing day from both OU and OSU and from local high schools. On signing day, of course, we'll break down their classes. We'll have a complete list of all their commitments, as much information as we can give about them. And of course, we'll be going to commitment ceremonies or signing ceremonies all over the state with video, stories, photos, everything. We've got probably 13 riders that will be dispatched on Wednesday to go to the reaches of the state to go to these ceremonies.
My old man coming out here, I don't remember this when we were in high school, Don. of.
Do they still use fax machines?
They do, and it's been said for a couple of years now that is the one industry that's keeping fax machines alive, is National Signing Day. I'm sure they'll figure out a way around it here in the next year or so, but they still do fax in their letters of intent.
Nolan, do you have any eligibility left? No, okay, he's out. All right. Don, what's going on in business? We've had a fun kind of story this week with the new press secretary for the new president of the United States and a local company. What's happening?
Sean Spicer, who most of us didn't know who he was a week ago. He's the press secretary for President Trump, and so people started digging into his past. And one of the things I looked at was his Twitter feed, and it turns out over the past several years, several times he has complained about Dippin' Dots, which is, as we all know, the ice cream of the future, and. Over the past few years, Dippin' Dots has become an Oklahoma City company. They're based in Kentucky. At one point, they declared bankruptcy, and a local guy, Scott Fisher, and the Fisher family bought Dippin' Dots, and so it's an Oklahoma City company now, even though it's still made in Kentucky. So there was a story showed up on the internet about Sean Spicer complaining about Dippin' Dots. He said it's not really the ice cream of the future. He went to a Washington Nationals game one time and complained about the fact that they ran out of vanilla. And he posted the story when they went bankrupt and said, "See, I told you it's not the ice cream of the future." Well, Scott Fisher, our local guy, who's the CEO of the company, after this came out, wrote an open letter to Sean Spicer and said, "Hey, we want to connect the dots. We want to have an ice cream social at the White House and invite you and the press to come." And later that day, late that night, same night, Sean Spicer tweeted back at him and said, "Well, let's do it for first responders and people who serve our country." And so maybe at some point there's going to be an ice cream social with Dippin' Dots.
A little thaw in the relationship. Maybe.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
good.
they should know that we, during the summer, right, have our Friday afternoon ice cream bar, buffet. I don't know what you want to call it. I don't know that we've ever had Dippin' Dots on it, though.
No, never have.
Maybe that's something we need to explore.
My son bought some bulk Dippin' Dots one time, and I will tell you, you can't keep Dippin' Dots in your freezer. It's not cold enough. So if you buy 5 pounds of Dippin' Dots like he did, you have to eat them within a period of a couple of days, or have a big supply of dry ice on hand to keep them cold enough. So.
Who knew? Who knew? Also, news from the oil patch.
Yeah, again, President Trump signed an order, trying to get the Keystone Pipeline back on get them building that again. That whole project got derailed when the Obama administration, because it crosses a border, the State Department was involved, and they kind of shut that project down because they said it was going to increase greenhouse gases in the United States. Trump has reversed that decision. Told them you need to buy U.S. steel to make this pipelines, and let's get that going. And the Dakota pipeline, where we've had the protests in North Dakota, to also get that going, which is of interest to people in Oklahoma because the Keystone Pipeline runs through Cushing, which is here in Oklahoma, it's the largest commercial oil hub in the United States. It's where they set the price of West Texas Intermediate crude oil. So that will probably mean at some point there will be more oil coming into Cushing. The southern leg of the Keystone Pipeline has been operational now for some time, which carries oil from Cushing to the refineries down the Gulf Coast. So there may be more infrastructure needed in Cushing because there'll be more oil coming through. There's a lot of companies and people in Oklahoma that have a lot of expertise in building pipelines and maintaining pipelines and supplying pipelines. So there is some good feeling in the industry about that project getting back on course because it could help the state's economy.
And that is a substantial pipeline. I don't think that's sometimes what people understand is that I believe it's like 2% of the nation's oil on a daily basis would come through that pipeline.
Well, yeah, it is. And one of the things that the industry talks about is that just because you don't build the Keystone Pipeline doesn't mean you don't have oil traveling all over the country and being delivered to all these different places. You do. They've been delivering a lot of it on trains. They've been delivering it on trucks, and the numbers will tell you that pipelines typically are safer ways to deliver oil than on rails or wheels. So that's an issue. But on the other hand, the environmentalists say this is some of the dirtiest oil that there is in the world that they're harvesting in Canada. It's this this
Tar sands oil.
Tar sands oil, yeah, and it's sulfurous and so forth. But so that debate continues, and the Dakota debate continues as well. But those projects appear to be back on course.
Great. Any new words for us this week?
I was gonna throw contango out there, but it would take me as long as we've spent talking about all this other stuff to explain.
Okay, maybe we can come back and have a whole special show on that.
Contango, sure.
Okay, we'll come back.
Wigwag, yeah. It's all one word, right?
It's all one word.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on Dippin' Dots before we go?
No.
All right. So that's the kind of insight that you can get every week, every day in the Oklahoman at newsok.com. Check us out, subscribe, pick up a paper. I think you'll enjoy what you find there. Thanks a lot. We'll see you next week.